The man charged in the 5 Points South mass shooting and 2 other deadly shootings in Birmingham now faces even more charges, including the mass shooting in July and another homicide in August. Here's a look at the timeline of these crimes. According to Birmingham police, 22-year-old Damian McDaniel of Bessemer is responsible for over 30% of the city's homicides from July to September. ABC 3340's Valerie Bell is working for you to learn more about these cases. Valerie, it's taken hours of investigating for police to piece all of these together.
It has, Megan, but the work doesn't stop there. Birmingham police say it's possible McDaniel could be connected to other unsolved homicides in Birmingham that hasn't been ruled out. Between July and September, Damian McDaniel is charged in 5 separate shootings. Altogether, he's accused of killing 11 people and injuring 29 others.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're headed down south, Birmingham, Alabama, where a string of shootings, it's left the city shaken, to say the least. And it's not just the violence itself. It's about the man at the center of it all, Damian McDaniel. He's accused of being involved in 5 separate shootings over just 3 months. And with a body count, well, it was hard to even grasp. 11 people killed, 29 injured.
Yeah, that's a staggering number. And what's even more disturbing is this. This isn't McDaniel's first run-in with the law. He's a convicted felon. And now folks in Birmingham, well, they're grappling with how this could have happened. How did this happen?
And that's what we're here to try to unpack. We're going to be diving into a news segment from ABC 3340 News. So get ready.
You know what really jumps out at me about this case is the sheer scale of the violence. We're talking about a potential link to over 30% of Birmingham's homicides. In just that 3-month period, that kind of concentration, it's incredibly rare, and it raises so many questions about, what kind of systemic issues might be contributing to this.
Absolutely. And looking at the timeline laid out by ABC 3340, it paints a pretty heartbreaking picture. Starts on July 13th. At an unlicensed venue, 4 people were killed and 10 others were injured. The news segment shows interviews with people from the community, and you can just feel the grief and anger. This shooting, it really shook the city.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that this venue, it wasn't operating within the city's regulations. After the shooting, there were a lot of discussions about how to better monitor these types of places and if stricter enforcement could have maybe prevented this tragedy.
Then barely a month later, there's another shooting connected to McDaniel. Starts with a stolen vehicle, escalates to a murder at an apartment, and ends in a police chase with officers actually firing their weapons.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly chaotic.
Yeah, and you see that chaos kind of playing out in a lot of these shootings, like the one on September 19th at a bar called 604, the victim there. They don't even think he was the intended target, which that just speaks to a whole other level of
reckless, man.
Disregard for human life. It's chilling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then there's the 5 Points South shooting just a few days later, Saturday night. Popular spot for nightlife. Police say over 100 rounds were fired.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. 4 people killed, 17 others injured. It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
The scale of that violence, it's just horrifying.
And then, listen, 24 hours later, another shooting in Eastlake, another life lost, and 2 more people hurt. It just felt relentless. It's important to bring up McDaniel's history here. He had actually already pleaded guilty to 2 counts of attempted murder. Just a month before that first shooting in July, he was given a 15-year sentence, but he only served 2 years and was then released on probation.
It's hard to hear that. There's so much anger and confusion in the community. Understandably, people are asking how someone with a history of violence like that could be back out on the streets. It raises some really tough questions about how effective our rehabilitation programs are and about the risk assessment tools that are used to decide if someone is safe to release.
It's a complicated issue, for sure. And then there's this whole other layer the police have mentioned, that they're looking into some of these homicides as potential pay-for-hire murders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we might be talking about contract killings. That suggests a level of premeditation and maybe even a larger criminal network. It makes you wonder, was McDaniel working alone, or was he part of something bigger?
Right. And those are questions that investigators are still trying to figure out. As we wait for more answers, we can't forget about the victims. We have to remember that behind all of this are real people with families, loved ones, whose lives are forever changed.
That's right. These are not just statistics. We're talking about human lives. And the impact of this violence, it ripples out far beyond the immediate victims. It shakes the community's sense of safety, their sense of trust.
And you really see that in the news segment. People are scared, they're angry, and they're demanding answers. This case has sparked a huge debate about the justice system itself.
And, McDaniel's early release from prison, that's a big part of that debate. People are pointing to his prior convictions, saying this tragedy could have been prevented.
Some are calling for stricter sentencing laws, arguing that longer prison terms will keep dangerous people off the streets.
And that's a view that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially when you're faced with a case as devastating as this one. But we have to consider the other side of the argument too, some people say, that just locking people up for longer doesn't really address the root causes of crime. They believe it's more effective to focus on rehabilitation programs, education, job training while someone is in prison. The idea is to address these underlying issues, to try and break that cycle of crime.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
It is. In this case, it's forcing Birmingham and maybe cities across the country to really confront those tough questions.
It's about more than just punishment. It's about the very philosophy of our justice system.
Exactly. Are we aiming to punish, to rehabilitate, or both?
And of course, we can't talk about this case without talking about community policing. The news segment highlighted how important community tips were in leading to McDaniel's arrest.
Right. That just shows how vital it is to have that connection between law enforcement and the communities they serve.
It's about working together, building trust, a sense of shared responsibility for keeping our communities safe.
Absolutely. When people feel comfortable sharing information, it can make a real difference in solving crimes and in preventing future incidents.
Exactly. And it goes both ways. It requires transparency and accountability from law enforcement as well.
You're right. It's about building bridges, fostering that two-way street of trust.
What's so fascinating to me about this case is that it goes beyond just one man's alleged actions. It's like a mirror reflecting all these larger societal issues: poverty, inequality, access to mental health services, that cycle of violence that can trap communities.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about connecting those dots, seeing that bigger picture, and understanding how all these factors contribute to these kinds of tragedies.
It's about moving beyond the headlines and asking ourselves the hard questions. What can we do as individuals, as a society, to create a safer and more just world?
It's a daunting challenge, but it's one we can't ignore.
Yeah.
And it starts right here. In our own communities, you might be thinking, what can I do to make a difference? But every action, even the small ones, can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Support local organizations that work with at-risk youth, advocate for criminal justice reform, even just having honest conversations with your friends and family about these issues. Those conversations can plant seeds for change.
It's about raising awareness, challenging our own assumptions, and working towards solutions.
Change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
For sure.
But if we engage in this dialogue, if we stay informed, if we're active citizens, we can work towards a future where tragedies like the ones in Birmingham become less frequent, not more.
Well said. And that's where we'll leave it for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
See you next time.